Clint Goodman is a successful architect and contractor who lives almost entirely for his work. His life revolves around deadlines, blueprints, and business deals, to the point where work has slowly become an obsession. One morning as he arrives at his office, Clint calls his beautiful wife, Joanna, to tell her that he will not be able to spend the weekend with her because of work commitments he cannot avoid. Still, he promises to come home early and take her out later. Joanna, however, clearly does not take it well, and her frustration is impossible to hide. After wrapping up a few tasks and meeting with a client, Clint decides to head home early to make things right. On the way, he is stopped by a local sheriff named Sam, who casually invites him to go fishing together. Clint politely turns down the offer, explaining that he needs to take Joanna to see her doctor. When he arrives home, Clint lets his loyal dog Duke out of his cage, feeling guilty knowing the dog has likely been barking all day without freedom. As he steps inside, he is met with Joanna's cold expression. She is clearly upset that Clint did not respond to the messages she sent earlier that morning. Her frustration quickly turns into anger, and despite Clint's effort to come home early, she dismisses him and decides to visit her doctor alone without him. In the middle of their argument, Clint mentions that earlier that day, a businessman offered to buy his company for $1.5 million. He explains that he turned the offer down. This only makes Joanna angrier. To her, that amount of money could have changed their lives. She reminds him that with that money, they could have moved back to New York, the city where she grew up. The conversation quickly turns into a heated argument, filled with resentment and disappointment. Feeling helpless and exhausted, Clint decides to clear his head by going fishing with Sheriff Sam. While he opens up about his troubled marriage, a shocking truth is revealed elsewhere. Joanna has been having an affair with her personal doctor, a man named Dr. Cortland. Cortland tells her about his plan to open a private clinic in Beverly Hills and invites her to leave everything behind and live with him. But his intentions go far beyond romance. Cortland reveals that he has discovered a deadly toxin extracted from fish ovaries, a poison capable of causing a sudden heart attack. He proposes a horrifying plan to kill Clint and take over his company together. At first, Joanna hesitates, but under Cortland's manipulation, she slowly gives in. He carefully instructs her on how to slip the poison into Clint's food without raising suspicion. What begins as a quiet plan soon becomes a path with no return. This is Buried Alive. Once she arrived home, Joanna immediately put her plan into motion. She roughly emptied her bag, searching for the bottle of poison. In her panic, the bottle cracked slightly, causing some of the liquid to spill out. Startled, she quickly grabbed it and hid it inside the laundry basket, unaware that the poison continued to slowly drip inside. Not long after, Clint returned home and found Joanna in the kitchen. He wrapped his arms around her, clearly happy to see her preparing dinner for him, something she almost never did. While she worked on the steak, Clint stepped into his workshop to handle a few things. The noise from the workshop began to irritate Joanna, and it reminded her of the poison hidden in the laundry basket. Without hesitation, she retrieved the bottle and decided to pour the poison into a glass of wine that Clint would soon drink. Unfortunately, Clint chose that moment to help her by carrying both glasses of wine to the dining table. Panic washed over Joanna as she realized she no longer knew which glass was poisoned. Her fear grew as she imagined the consequences of choosing the wrong one. Clint lifted his glass, inviting her to share a quiet toast together. What was meant to be a romantic moment quickly turned into a nightmare. Pain suddenly tore through his body, and he collapsed to the floor, clutching his stomach as the poison attacked his heart. He cried out for help, reaching toward Joanna, but she coldly pushed his hand away. Without hesitation, she made it clear that his death would only make things better. Once she was certain he had stopped moving, Joanna called Cortland and calmly told him that everything was done. Not long after, she pretended to contact the authorities as part of her alibi. Sheriff Sam and a heart specialist soon arrived, shocked to see their friend lying lifeless at the height of his success. During the investigation, a bottle of poison lay on the floor, nearly stepped on by Sam, though he never noticed it. The scene then shifts to a hospital morgue, where one of the bodies inside the cold storage suddenly moves. No one knows whose body it is or how something like that could happen. The next morning, Clint's body is removed from the storage drawer as staff prepare him for burial. At the same time, the funeral home receives a call from Cortland, explaining that Joanna wants the burial to happen as quickly as possible, without any preservation process. Following those instructions, the funeral home staff are told to stop all additional procedures. Joanna has chosen only the cheapest coffin and wants the burial done immediately. Soon, Clint's funeral takes place, attended by family, friends, and neighbors who come to say their final goodbyes. Not long after, something strange begins to happen. Clint's loyal dog starts barking uncontrollably and acting restless. especially when Joanna approaches the coffin to place a single flower on top. She continues her performance, crying as if she were a grieving wife completely broken by loss. That night, after Clint's funeral, Joanna and Cortland celebrated what they believed was their victory. They laughed together in the bathtub, sharing a glass of wine, convinced their plan had worked perfectly. But something about the night felt different. Thunder rolled through the darkness, lightning flashed across the sky, and Duke suddenly began barking uncontrollably, as if he sensed something was terribly wrong. Annoyed by the noise, Joanna grew irritated. She stepped out of the bathtub, grabbed a rifle, and stormed outside with the intention of silencing the dog once and for all. Instead, the shot struck the lock on Duke's cage, allowing him to break free and escape. Unharmed, Duke ran through the darkness, guided by instinct, until he reached the cemetery. Slowly, he approached Clint's grave and sat beside it. Then something impossible happened. Clint was still alive inside the coffin. The poison had only knocked him unconscious, and its effects had finally worn off. With the last of his strength, he forced his way out, clawing through the rain-soaked soil until he emerged from the ground. Duke stayed close as Clint staggered toward his home. The front door was locked, forcing him to move around the side of the house. What he saw inside shattered him. Through the window, he witnessed Joanna in an intimate moment with the man he believed was only her personal doctor. In that instant, the truth became painfully clear. Clint waited until Cortland finally left the house. Then he broke a basement window and tried to climb inside, but his weakened body failed him. Unable to continue, he hid in the basement and spent the night there, wounded and barely conscious. The next morning, Joanna visited Clint's lawyer. She was informed about important documents and the details of her husband's bank accounts. Without hesitation, she agreed to sell his company for $1.5 million, with payment to be completed within 48 hours. At nearly the same time, Clint regained consciousness in the basement. Weak but determined, he climbed the stairs, drank water from the sink, and grabbed something to eat. Just as he finished, he saw Joanna's car pulling into the driveway. He rushed back downstairs and found his rifle, but in his weakened state, he dropped the ammunition and had to climb back down to retrieve it. After loading the rifle, Clint prepared to confront his wife. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, the doorbell rang. Sheriff Sam had arrived. As he stood there, Sam reflected on how much effort it had taken to build that house from nothing and how far Clint had come in life. His words carried a quiet weight, especially when he noticed the for sale sign in the yard. He questioned how Joanna could so easily put the house on the market. Calmly, she explained that the house no longer felt the same after Clint was gone, and selling it felt like the only option left. As Sam prepared to leave and return to his duties, Dr. Cortland arrived at the house. He presented himself calmly and professionally, appearing like a doctor, simply checking on a patient. From inside the house, Clint saw Cortland arrive and felt a surge of rage. He wanted to end both of their lives right then and there. But when he realized his rifle held only one bullet, he made the decision to return to the basement to get another round. Meanwhile, Joanna's anxiety continued to grow, especially after Sheriff Sam's visit. His presence made her uneasy, and she began to fear that he was starting to suspect the truth. Desperate, she begged Cortland to leave town with her before Sam uncovered everything. But Cortland refused. He insisted they wait one more night, explaining that the money from Clint's business sale would be released the next day. After loading another bullet into his rifle, Clint quietly climbed the stairs. By chance, he overheard a conversation between Joanna and Cortland that shattered him completely. He learned that Joanna had once been pregnant with his child and had secretly ended the pregnancy with Cortland's help. The revelation crushed him. Rage and heartbreak consumed his thoughts, erasing any sense of reason. As he stared at the rifle now loaded with 2 bullets, he realized that killing them quickly would be too merciful. He wanted them to suffer slowly. Later that night, while Joanna slept deeply, Clint tended to his wounds in the bathroom, cleaning the dirt and blood still clinging to his body. The next morning, several people arrived at the house carrying suitcases filled with cash, confirming that Clint's business had officially been sold. That same afternoon, Sheriff Sam went to Clint's grave after receiving a report from the groundskeeper. The grave had been disturbed and the body was no longer inside. Confused and unsettled, Sam ordered everyone to keep the discovery secret until he could investigate further. At the same time, Joanna was in high spirits as she counted the money with a wide smile. Her mood shifted instantly when she noticed mud covering much of the bathroom floor. As she began cleaning it, the sound of a dog barking echoed through the house. Irritated, she grabbed a rifle and aimed it toward Duke. Suddenly, Clint appeared and startled her, causing her to fall into the basement below. Later that night, Cortland was seen collecting poison extracted from his fish. He planned to kill Joanna and take all the money for himself. When he arrived at her house, he prepared a syringe filled with the deadly substance and called out for her, but there was no response. He then entered the room and discovered a suitcase filled with cash. Meanwhile, Joanna slowly regained consciousness. As she came to, she faintly heard a man calling her name from upstairs and assumed it was an intruder who had broken into the house. Acting on instinct, she quickly hid beneath the stairs. When Cortland opened the basement door and stepped down, Joanna suddenly emerged and struck him from behind, knocking him unconscious and causing the syringe of poison to fall from his hand. She immediately grabbed her suitcase and rushed toward the stairs. But Clint suddenly appeared and blocked her path. Not long after, Clint began carrying wooden planks into the house. His purpose was unclear, but everything he did pointed towards something far more disturbing. Below, Cortland slowly regained consciousness. When Joanna realized he was awake, she apologized for hitting him and claimed that a man had trapped them in the basement. Hearing this, Cortland tried to force their escape by firing at the locked door, but the gun was empty and only released air. Refusing to give up, Cortland attempted to break through a boarded window. At that moment, the sound of Duke barking echoed from outside, startling him. Meanwhile, upstairs, it became clear that Clint was rebuilding the house in his own way. He cut through walls without hesitation, even slicing through old photos of himself and Joanna, leaving both of them confused and terrified below. The next morning, Joanna woke up and realized they had been trapped for nearly 8 hours. The sounds above made them believe that the man upstairs was Sheriff Sam, coming for their money. Soon after, Joanna spotted the syringe on the floor and realized that Cortland had planned to poison her. In desperation, she demanded that he burn all the money to prove his love. Cortland refused, and in her rage, she threatened him with the syringe. Eventually, he admitted that he never truly intended to open a clinic as he had claimed. Furious, Joanna attacked him with the syringe. But before anything could happen, the basement door suddenly opened. They rushed out, only to find that the entire space had changed. Walls and wooden barriers now filled the area, leaving them disoriented and trapped in darkness. As panic set in, they began blaming each other for everything that had gone wrong.
Just stop it!
Then a wooden board suddenly dropped between them, separating them in the narrowing space. At the far end of the corridor, a shadow appeared. They believed it was Sam. Desperate, Cortland tried to bribe the figure with all the money they had. But in a horrifying moment, Clint stepped forward instead. The shot caused Cortland to stumble backward, and the poisoned syringe pierced straight into his body. In the middle of the chaos, Joanna was suddenly startled by a masked figure standing in front of her. Panicked, she crawled into a narrow passage until she could move no farther, and the space around her closed in like a coffin. Moments later, Clint opened the confined space where she was trapped and forced Cortland's lifeless body inside. Joanna screamed in terror as she realized there was no escape. After sealing them together, Clint poured gasoline throughout the room and set the house on fire. He then walked away, taking his loyal dog and a large chest in the back of his vehicle. Not long after, thick smoke caught Sam's attention, drawing him to the burning house. He watched as the flames consumed the structure, yet something felt deeply wrong. There were no screams, no signs of anyone trying to escape. To prevent the fire from spreading, Sam called the firefighters. Once the flames were extinguished, the rescue team found no bodies inside, leaving Sam with a growing sense that something was terribly off. Soon after, Sam rushed to Clint's grave and saw a man standing silently before it. At first, he thought it was a groundskeeper, but then he realized the truth. It was Clint. Sam urged him to leave the town immediately and promised to cover up everything that had happened, assuring him that he would not have to face any consequences. Clint said nothing in return. He simply nodded and walked away, disappearing into the distance. In the final moments, the truth is revealed. Joanna was still alive, buried beneath the ground alongside Cortland. Trapped in darkness, she screamed for help, realizing that she would die buried alive with her money and the man she conspired with, both of them destined to face their end together. So the moral of the story is, if you cheat, lie, and try to poison people for money, you will probably end up buried alive with your bad decisions and zero refund policy.